This is the DJI Ronin RS4, and I'm going to be telling you guys 10 ways that you can get more out of this very gimbal. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, you fall into two camps. Either you're somebody who's interested in picking up the RS4 and wanting to learn how to get more out of it after you buy it, or you're someone who's like me, who bought the Ronin RS4 and then immediately took it out of the box, charged the batteries, balanced your camera on it, and immediately took it out shooting without reading the manual. And I found 10 unique ways that you can actually get more out of this gimbal, so let's jump into it. Now, the first one is probably one that you saw because it was all over the marketing, but it actually works really easy, even easier than some of the ways I saw it shown online, and that is switching this thing into vertical mode. Literally, you just undo this little dial at the back, you press this button in the front, and literally this whole top piece comes off. You can then switch your camera into vertical mode and attach it, just re-tighten the knob in the back, and now you're shooting vertical. And this is fantastic, especially for those people who tend to have to put their cameras in cages in order to have side mounting points, or if you're someone who used an L bracket. Long gone are those days, just do it directly on the gimbal. All right, the second tip that I have for you is actually unlocking new shooting modes. Now, on the side of this gimbal, you actually have 3 different shooting modes that you can put the gimbal into. You have pan, tilt, follow, you have pan, follow, and then you have FPV mode, but it's underneath FPV mode where you actually have some more options. So if you actually put your gimbal into FPV mode and then you tap on the actual icon that indicates what mode you're in, you'll see that it unlocks more modes. The first mode that it actually unlocks is the 3D Roll 360, which can allow you to get some really cool, unique shots, but also if you scroll over again, you get into custom. And this is actually where the real unlock happens, because underneath custom in the top right corner, there's a little pencil icon. You tap on that and now you can actually determine which accesses are on and which ones are locked. So if you don't think that pan, tilt, and follow give you enough options, now you can 100% control all the accesses yourself. Now, the next way that you can get the most out of this gimbal is by actually attaching your fizz unit. Now, this unit here is called a fizz unit, and this is basically going to allow you, for most people, to control focus. However, you don't just have to actually use it for focus. In my case, I use a lot of mirrorless cameras with this setup, and they have really great autofocus, which means I've actually set mine up for zoom. Whenever I'm rocking a zoom lens, I actually will attach my gear clamp onto the actual zoom ring itself, and then I will set it up to actually work on zoom. Now, one thing is very important. Inside the gimbal, you do want to calibrate this motor so that way it doesn't come loose because you took it too far. And that's actually super easy to do. All you have to do is literally go onto your screen, swipe down, and then in the bottom left corner is your motor options. You're going to tap on that, and then the first one is focus motor calibration. Even though it says focus, it works for zoom, but you literally just tap it and boom, you're all set. Now it will actually calibrate that motor for you. Speaking of calibration, it's super important that you actually calibrate your gimbal every time you use it, especially when you're going between different payloads, because, well, let's face it, it's how the motors actually know how much they need to work based off of your camera package. But the actual process of calibrating is super easy. All you have to do is press down the M dial as well as pull your trigger for about 3 to 4 seconds, and that will actually start a auto calibration. I do this every time I shoot. As soon as I'm done balancing, I just hold down those 2 buttons, my camera calibrates, and I'm ready to shoot. Now, this next way to get more out of your camera does come at a little bit of an expense, and that is to upgrade the battery. As you can see, this is a much taller and bigger battery, and you can absolutely get one of these for your gimbal. The main reason why I like picking this up is, yes, I do like the extra battery life, but more importantly, it actually has enough space for me to put both hands on the actual battery grip itself. And I have used this on multiple shoots, and I can tell you this thing will absolutely last your gimbal all day. Now, this next tip actually comes from a failure on my part, and I'll make it make sense in a second. And that tip is to actually utilize the briefcase grip that comes with your unit. This thing is amazing. It has a thread on the side, which you can absolutely use to attach a monitor, but you can use it in a few different ways. The obvious way, and the way that DJI sort of built it, was to use it for low shots in a more briefcase mode, hence why they called it the briefcase side handle. But it is how I actually prefer to use it, is to actually have my camera pointing out to the side and then using both the briefcase handle and the actual grip as sort of a 2-hand setup. And I find that this works out for me so much more because it's actually going to allow me to distribute that weight between the 2 points. But one bonus tip that is kind of the mistake I made, and that is when you are installing this, install it from underneath. That way if it ever slips, it has this safety knob here that actually will catch it. So if you ever don't tighten this little knob down all the way, you're still safe. All right, now my next tip is all about how you actually connect your camera to the gimbal itself. The gimbal can actually do a lot of controlling on your camera for you. For example, there is a big red button that most people would think is just there to record video, but if you actually half press that, that will also pull focus. And if you happen to be using this in a photography manner, this can actually even capture photos. Now there's two ways that you can actually go about connecting your camera to the gimbal. You can either first connect it via Bluetooth. However, only certain cameras work, and the way you have to set them up is going to differ per camera. DJI has an entire list of cameras that work with Bluetooth or don't work with Bluetooth listed, and I'll make sure I'll have that website linked down below in the description. But the easiest way that I have found that works with pretty much all the cameras I've tested, and that is to plug in directly via USB-C. You can plug that directly into your camera, and in my situation, I didn't even have to install anything on my camera, turn on any settings in my camera. It just immediately started working. Now these next three modes are all settings that I personally recommend that you change, but it's completely up to you. The first is orbit follow. I know there's been times where you've probably been trying to get that beautiful orbiting shot where you actually have your subject in the center and then you're moving your gimbal around that person trying to keep them center, and the pan doesn't necessarily move at the speed you'd want it to. Now obviously you can go into your actual menus and change the follow speed from slow, medium, high, and even custom, but sometimes you just want to be able to keep that pan moving quick but everything else still moving at its own pace. And this is where orbit follow comes into play. You can go into your settings and you can actually turn on orbit follow whenever you're doing an orbiting shot, and I have found that this helps nail that shot much easier. The next setting that I highly recommend that you change is to put your gimbal in silent mode. Yes, this gimbal is fantastic, but it does make a lot of noise. And if you are on a professional shoot, like most people who buy this gimbal are going to be on, then I highly recommend that you put this thing in silent. This means that when it turns on and turns off, it won't be making a ton of noise, which won't disrupt your shoot. And the final setting I recommend that you change is to turn on your push mode. Push mode just allows you to physically turn the gimbal and actually have it stay in that particular area. And this can be great, especially when you're trying to quickly point your camera to a certain area and have it hold and not have your gimbal fight back. Sometimes you're actually gonna be using it like this, where your gimbal is just sitting flat on a surface and you wanna just be able to turn your camera and have it face the subject that you want it to be in. This is where push mode is incredibly helpful. You can dial in that shot yourself and you don't have to worry about trying to do it with just the joystick. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 10 tips that I actually use with this gimbal, especially when I'm using it in a professional environment. I would love to know if you guys have additional tips, maybe some things that I missed that you can share down below in the comment section, so that way we can all get the most out of these gimbals. And the best part is I found that pretty much all of those tips not only work with the RS4, but they also work with the RS4 Pro. So even if you have that gimbal, those tips will help you. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you have any additional questions about this gimbal or anything that I talked about, leave those down below in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next video.